With the text field, you can get user input from the keyboard, and then the user can type some information, for example his email. We will also look later how we can add a password and also how we can add different numbers. After we look at the different borders our text field can have, and at the end we will look at how we can programmatically focus and unfocus text fields. If you're new here, subscribe to my channel and make sure to watch this video till the end. We want to get started here with our email, password and number field. Therefore I have created here a new widget with one button, and this is exactly here this button. And on top of it we want to create our email field, and therefore I create a new method, and here we basically create a text field. And here inside you can set first of all an input action, and I have set it here for example to done, so it will be here at the bottom this done field. And then I also want to add here a keyboard type to email address, so we have a specific email address keyboard. And what this keyboard type email address is doing, it simply suggests here email addresses if you have any in your system. And then you can choose them here, and then you don't need to type the whole email address by your own. Now let's look at the more basic stuff. So first of all, we can add a decoration, and here inside you can set for example an outline input border, and then we have here this border around our text field. Then you can also set here a label for your text so that you see that this is an email text field, and if you click then here, then this will go here up on our input border. You can also add an hint text, and this will be always displayed if we have no content inside of our text field. However, if we type here our first character, then this hint text will disappear. Text fields are boring without some icons, and therefore you can also set here an icon, and I choose here this mail icon, and then you have here a mail icon in front of your text field. However, you can also use here this other property which is called prefix icon, and this will then put this icon inside of the text field. So if you like to have this one, then you simply choose the prefix icon instead of the normal icon. Now suppose that we have here an email inside of our text field, and we want to get this email text if we click on the submit button. And how we can do this is by adding a controller to our text field, and then you simply create here at the top of your state level this email controller. So you simply initialize here this TextEditingController. And now we can make use of this email controller. So we go here down, and here we add this suffix icon, and then we can add here an icon to the end, not to the beginning like before. And here I put simply an icon of this close icon inside, and also an on pressed handler. So if we click on this icon, then we want to delete our text. And the text we can simply delete with our email controller. So we simply call here emailcontroller.clear, and this will then clear our text within our text field. So let's say you have some text here inside, and you click then on clear, and then you see that the text will disappear. In case you want to hide here this X if you have here no text inside, then you simply go to your suffix icon and check here if our email controller text is empty, and if that's the case, then we add here instead of this icon button a container with a width of 0. And now if I type here something, you don't see that it is changing between this container and this icon button, and therefore you can also put here at the top this initState method, and then you can simply add to your controller add listener, and every time if we have here an update to our controller, so this means if we type here a different text inside, then this will call setState, and the setState will then care about that here inside the container and the icon button are switched depending on if we have here an empty text or if we have here a filled text. Now let's try this also out. I click on restart, and you see in the beginning we have here no X, and if we then type here one letter at least, then you see we get here this X, and we can also hide this here again if we click on the X. Now we want to build here this password field, and you can also see we have here this button, and with this button we can basically toggle the visibility of our password, so you can hide the password or you can show your password. To create this password field, we create this time here a string password, so I will show you an alternative how you can also store a password within a string and not within a text editing controller. But basically both of them are working the same. And we also create here a field is password visible, with which we can change the visibility of our password. Now let's go to our build method and create here this build password method, and here inside I create a text field and I add here some decoration like before. So we add here a hint text and a label text and a border, and this will look then like this. And now what we want to do is we want to add here the functionality, so we want to add here this visibility button, and also here you can add some error if you like. So let's maybe start with the error text. So if you like, you can always put here an error text under your field, and therefore you simply put here a string inside instead of a value of null. Now let's add here the suffix icon, which will be displayed here at the end. And depending on our boolean flag is password visible, we want to put here different icons inside. So the first icon will be this icon, and we also have here the second icon, which is this icon. And then we also implement the onPressed handler, and here we simply toggle this boolean field. So we call here is password visible, and then we toggle it, and we also make sure that we call here setState so that we update our UI. And now we have here this button, and every time if you press on this, then it will simply toggle here this icon. To also make here our text invisible, we also need to add here this obscure text property, and here we need to set our is password visible. And if we do this, then we can basically toggle here this field, and you see also the password will change, because if we have here a value of true inside, then the text is obscured and we see it like this. And if you put here a value of false inside, then it will simply show the real text. And the last thing what we want to do is we want to store our password within our password here in our string. And how we can do this is by calling here this onChanged handler, and then we simply get here every time if we type here a new letter, then we get here this whole text, which is going here inside of this value. And this value we want to put to our password field, so that all this text is always stored here in our password field. Alternatively, you also have here this onSubmitted field, and here every time if we click on this button here on this keyboard, then this is executed, and we get then here also this value, which we also could put into our password string. And now we can simply print this password if we click on the submit button. So let's go here to the submit button, and if we click on this button, then we can first of all print our email. So therefore we call here this email controller at the top, and then we access here the text of our email field. And in case of the password, we can simply put here the password string inside. So this is basically doing here the same thing. So we can make use of this text editing controller, or we can also store our text directly in a string if you like. However, with this email controller, you have more access. So you have here all the methods like clear, and you can also add here a listener and so on. And therefore you have more control with the text editing controller. Now I have added here an email and also a password, and if we click on this button, you see that he simply prints it to the console. So first of all, here our email, and also our password is printed to the console. And then you can put here your logic inside what should happen. So basically you call here an API to your server, and then you pass the email and the password to your server, and then he will check it, and then you can do whatever you like with the response of your server. Now we want to look at the number text field, where you actually can put only numbers inside. Let's start by adding here a new text editing controller. So we add here this number controller, and then we add here a new method build number, and then we put here this number controller inside so that we later can access the text of our number field. Like before, we can also add again a decoration. So we want to add here an hint text, and we also want to have here this outline border. And in this case, if I type here something, then you don't see here any title like before. And what you also can do, therefore, is to simply wrap this here inside of a column. And then you can basically build here your own text if you like, so that it is displayed here on top of your text field. And therefore, I simply create here this text widget, and under it we have some space. And this will look then like this. So we have here our text, and also below we have here our text field. So this is also a possibility how you can add here a description on your text field. Now if I'm here inside of this number text field, you see that we have here only these letters in our keyboard, and how you can change it is by calling here the keyboard type, and here inside you can set the input type to number. And if you do this, then you can hot restart your application, and then if you click here again on this number field, then you see we can only put here numbers inside, and we also can add here a dot for decimal numbers. Now we want to look at how we can change the color of our text field, and therefore you simply call here these two properties. So we set fill to true, and then you can choose here the color of your text field. So in this case I put it to black, and now you see we don't see here our text anymore. And how we can change it is by calling here our hint style and change it to a color of white. And then you see first of all the hint. However, if I type here now something inside, then you don't see the text, because we also need to change here the style. And here we can basically change it also to a color of white. And then we can also see the things what I have typed here inside. And like you can see, I can type here on my keyboard, on my computer here, these things inside. However, in the app, this is not working, so we only have here access to these numbers. Now let's also print this number if we click here on the submit button. Therefore, we go here up, and under it, we also put here a print statement inside. And this time we put here the number controller inside and access here the text of our number text field. And now if we try this out and click on submit, you should see that we also have here the number inside, and this is exactly the text of this text field. Now we want to look at the different border styles we have for our text field, so we can have no border, an underline border, or also different kind of outline borders. Therefore, I have created here a new file, TextField border widget, and here we have basically some text inside, and under it we want to build our text field. So first of all, we create here text field with the decoration of border input border none, and this will simply create here a text field, so we can type here something. However, this has no border under it. Then we also can add here another text field with an underline, and therefore you simply create here this decoration border underline input border, and now you see that we have here this underline input border if we type a message. Let's also add this outline border, and this is what we did before already. So we simply call here this outline input border, and then you have here this square border. Now let's create a rounded outline border. Therefore I create a text field with an input decoration, and here inside we create an enabled border, and here you can basically then define how the border should look like. And you can set, for example, a color, which I set right now to black. And you also can set here the width of your border. So we have here a width of 3 pixels. And this will then look like this. So we have here our black border, and you can see that we have here also a bigger border like before, because we have put here these 3 pixels inside. If we now click here on this text field, you see, okay, we have here an underline input. And this is a bit strange because we have set here our outline input border. However, for this focus, you have to also add here another field, which is called focus border. And here inside, you then need to set again this outline input border. And this time I put here again another border side inside, width of 3. And this time I put here a color of green inside in case that we have focused this text field. And now you see if I have focused this text field, then it is green. And if I go here again to another field, then it is again black. so it's simply displaying again this input border here. And to make this also rounded, we also can set here a border radius inside of our input border. And here I set simply a border radius of 16, and this will then make our here rounded. And if I click here again inside, you see it is not rounded, so we also need to add it here to our focus border. And here I also make it rounded, and now you see we have here also in the focus state a rounded border. Lastly, we want to add here this beveled border, which is a different shape. Therefore, we add here again a text field with an input decoration, and here inside we set the enabled border, and this time we want to create here our custom border, and then you also set here how this border should look like, and we also set here our focus border, and we put here again our custom border inside, and then we simply choose here again a color and a width. And for this cut corners border, I simply take here this file, which I got from the Flutter team. So the Flutter team developed this already, and you simply can get it here with the first link in the description, where you get the access to this whole project here. And with the second link, you can get access to my Flutter courses, where I teach you how you can become a more efficient developer. And now we simply display here this cut corners border from the Flutter team, and then you see we have here this beveled border for our text field. Lastly, we want to look at how we can programmatically change the focus of our text field, so we can unfocus the text fields, or we can also focus a text field if we click on a specific button. Therefore, I have created here a new page where we have basically 4 buttons and 2 text fields. And now we want to implement all of these buttons. Let's start with this Focus TextField 1 button, and if we click on this button, then it should focus here this first text field and should simply open the keyboard. To focus a text field, we can simply put here within our first text field this focus node, and therefore I simply create here a node 1, and there we create in our state level this focus node, and this focus node we can then access if we click on our button. Therefore, we go here to this Focus TextField button, which is exactly here this button widget. And if we click on this button, then this onClicked handler is executed. And here basically we want to call this focus scope, and we want to request the focus of this node here at the top. And what we do therefore is we simply put here the node 1 inside. And now we can try it out. So if I click here on Focus TextField, then you see that he focused the first text field. And the same thing we can implement here for our second button for the Focus TextFields 2. And here inside we create again a node 2. And this time we put this node 2 to our second text field. So here I simply add this focus node and put here the second node inside. And now we can access here this node 2 if we click here on our button. So I go here down to our TextField 2 button, and here inside we do the same thing like before. So we call this focus scope request focus, and this time we put here the node 2 instead inside, which has the connection to our TextField 2. And now I simply can press here on this Focus TextField 2, and you see he gets the focus for the TextField 2. And I also can then change it again to 1 and so on. Now we want to look at how we can unfocus a text field programmatically again, and therefore we simply implement here this button widget unfocus, and if we click on it, then we want to call the focus scope request focus, and this time we put here another focus node inside, so we simply add here an instance of a focus node. And this line here will basically remove the focus node of all the active focus nodes. So let's also try this out. So if I click here on Unfocus TextFields, then you see that it is simply unfocusing it. And this is because we put here a new focus node inside, which is not similar to the one which is, for example, right now active. Sometimes you also want to disable your text field if you click, for example, here outside of this widget, and this is what we want to look at right now. And how you can add this functionality is pretty simple. So you simply go to your build method and then we wrap it inside of a gesture detector. And this gesture detector has an onTap property. So if we click here anywhere on our screen, then we call here this, what we called already before if we clicked on Unfocus TextFields. So it will simply unfocus all the text fields. Now we can try it out. So if I have here the focus and I click here outside of it, you see it will also loses the focus. Sometimes you also want to lose the focus of your text field if you scroll up or down, and this is what you can achieve with a plugin, and therefore you need to add here this keyboard dismisser plugin under your dependencies within your pubspec YAML file. Therefore I simply deactivate right now this gesture detector and we want to add the functionality of this plugin. And this plugin works similar to our gesture detector, so we simply wrap here our keyboard dismisser inside, which comes from this plugin. And here you can then set these gestures on which we want to unfocus our keyboard or our focus of our text field. And therefore you can simply put here this gesture type onTap inside, and this will basically do the same thing as our gesture detector, so you don't need this here if you also put this here inside. So let's try it out. So we have here text field focus and I click here outside and you see it will unfocus the text field, and therefore we don't need to have here this anymore inside. We can also add here this gesture type on vertical drag down, and now every time if we drag here down, then it also loses its focus. And like you can see, this is really handy, this keyboard dismisser. So you have here different kind of gesture types with which you can basically then dismiss your keyboard. Lastly, I want to show you how you can also disable your text field. And this is pretty simple. So we want to add first of all a suffix icon for this case. So we have here this icon and we can basically press on it. To now disable our text field, we can basically set here this enabled field to false. And now you can see I cannot type here anymore on our text field, and I also cannot click here on this suffix icon anymore. However, there is also another option which you can use. As an alternative, we can also put here this read-only flag to true. And now we can basically not type here inside anymore. However, we can still press on this button here and execute the functionality of this button. So I will keep this inside, so in case you want to download the source code of this project, you find it here inside of this project. And lastly, as a small bonus, I want to show you here within our first widget that you can also autofocus one of these text fields. So basically we want to autofocus this email text field, and therefore you simply add here another field which is called autofocus and you set it to true. And if we hot restart our application, you see that this email field gets automatically the focus and the keyboard is opening up. And also if I switch here basically the tabs and go here again inside, you see it will focus again here this email field. Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel here to get the latest news about Flutter, and see you soon. Bye!